Hello, everyone, and we're back at Stardew Diaries. Um, I have a little bit of a secret for you guys. This is actually pre-recorded. It's on the same day that I have our special guest here,
Mm.
Lupus. Introduce yourself again.
Good day, everybody. I am also known as Kairos Tempus, but right now I am Lupus Ukami Seiza, and I'm joining Coco in his Stardew Diaries. It's a nice game,
Why are you
static
here?
wise. Because nah.
Because you're
It's
a
so
friend.
funny.
Because you're a friend,
Yes, I'm a
and you
friend.
wanted to talk about stuff here. I decided to pre-record this because I might not be the most stable tomorrow, and I might be busy, um, needing to relax or doing something else tomorrow. So I just pre-recorded this for my sake, and I hope you guys don't mind it. And this is the first time that I will be pre-recording an episode. It will happen from time to time because, for example, this weekend, me and my partner will be spending our anniversary, fifth anniversary. So I will be spending most of my day um, with him, or at least would try to spend most of my day with him. Our plan is to go to a beach, just relax there. Nothing special, no resorts, just an empty beach. Um, to save money, save costs. Oh, never mind. And in the morning, we plan to do an exchange gift. Um, I know it's terrible because you're telling your partner you have a gift for them, but we're not necessarily like sentimental or kind of people. But I did tell him that I don't have a lot of money, so I told him that not to expect anything big, and because of that, we just decided to have an exchange gift. Or it's like a Christmas party, right? Because we allotted like a budget for our gift, like 1,500 pesos for our fifth anniversary. But like we're not necessarily sentimental people. Like you never see our photos like in Facebook or anything like that. It's just we're chill guys, you know.
Chill gaze, chill gaze.
Yeah, we're very chill guys, and we don't really care too much what the societal norms is when it comes to running our relationship. And but yeah, so we're back at Stardew Diaries, and today I just plan on mining because we still need a lot of coal to set up the for our rows. So let me just set some stuff up. Why not you actually introduce what topic you wanted to talk about, and while I sort myself out, go ahead.
Well, it relates to what Coco's plans for this Saturday. It's a writing relationship, and yeah, we're gonna talk about reading and writing.
I thought we were gonna
Reading
talk
and writing.
about relationships. I mean,
No,
normally we
no.
don't prepare our topics in advance, but I thought, yeah, we're gonna talk about writing and reading. You go
Mm-hmm.
start it because
Oh,
honestly, I don't know where to start.
uh, to be exact, all my relationships are all fictional. So, let's say in reading, it's all started in back in high school. I keep reading and stuff, reading, sharing books and stuff, and it kind of developed. That's how I encountered a furry video because I'm addicted to werewolf stories, and I dive into like other stuff. That's how I got introduced to furries, and I got into the furry fandom, and I played a visual novel. It's a good reading type of game where like you are novel and there's a visual.
Do
That's
you
why it's
call it
called
the game
visual
though?
novel.
Do you call it a game? Because I don't consider visual novels as. I mean, it is a game. It's just
Mm-hmm.
for me, the definition of a game is interaction, but the interaction is basically just clicking and some choices. Um, but there is something called like a choose your adventure book, and I've never owned one, but I would love to have one. Choose your adventure books are like it kind of like solo D&D sessions where you read a book and you have choices there. It's kind of like a visual novel, but it's in a
Linear.
physical book. Yeah, it's linear. But yeah. So for me personally, I'm not actually much of a big reader. I don't have the patience to read books, but I do read a couple. but I only like either. Um, I have a very specific like set of or kind of books that I like to read. Either murder mysteries, or mysteries, or fantasy books. So I have read. Oh my goodness, I forgot. Something about Clan of the Bears, and it's basically a fantasy book. The main protagonist is a woman who is a Homo sapien, so like our generation of humans. Um, like she just evolved from being a Homo sapien, and she had to live with a bunch of I forgot what they're called, but cavemen's, like what we came before what we are now. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
it's basically because there's a point in our history that those two generations were coexisting, and it's a really good read. There's like a couple of books on it, like it's like a series, and I never was able to finish it because in the beginning it was actually talking about survival, talking about like the interactions between the Homo sapiens and the cavemen, and then it kind of became like a harem situation at some
I
point in the future books, and like it kind of lost its plot for me, and like I don't know, I never really got to finish it anymore. But yeah, I'm not a huge reader fan. I'm very impatient, but I do have a book in the office that I read from time to time. Um, and visual novels, I would love to play visual novels. My only problem with visual novels, they're never finished, and I can't play in an unfinished game. I hate that, and that's something that I criticize a lot. And yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
kind of same. Though I have no choice because I'm also interested. I'm a bit. I have to admit, I'm also impatient, but to the point that I have no time to wait. I really need to do this, and some that type of impatience. And yeah, if you're not a fan of reading, what about the other stuff?
Writing.
Writing.
So
Mm-hmm.
I am a terrible writer. I think I am a better storyteller. Um,
Mm,
that's why I prefer running D&D campaigns rather than writing campaigns, because I think I have a good idea on what like a story is supposed to be like. And I absolutely love the interactive nature of D&D. So it's kind of like a perfect hobby for me, right? So
yep.
yeah, that's how I started. But if you're asking like what stuff do I write or prefer writing, I actually prefer
Mm-hmm.
writing character designs, story designs, like storyboarding, and world building. But I wouldn't say like I'm a good writer for dialogues, or um, like like narratives, like two characters talking to each other. I'm not particularly good at those, or at least those aren't my preference. I prefer to write plots and like the main storyline, and then other people can write stuff about what I write. Right? Do you have an idea of what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, no wonder you leave the dialogues to us sometime.
I mean, I have to do that in D&D.
But yeah, it's a fun way, fun stuff, right? And storytell, and that's the case. That's our case. But
Gosh.
do you have any like advice when storytelling or creating a scene? I really like the
So,
campaign, world building.
I don't really have a particular oh, how should I say this? Like a style, or I don't even know what to call it. But the way I see it, describe the external stuff first, and then connect those external stuff to the subject. So let's
Mm,
say when I describe a scene, I describe um, what's on the outside first, what the viewers are should see, and mostly those are the unimportant details, but they also set the scene. So for example, when you have like a tender romantic scene in mind, I would always describe the scenery first, because for me, when you're in love with someone and you're confessing to them, normally you don't want to look at them, right?
True.
You don't want to
True.
look at them, and you're shy. So I would describe the scene as, um, describing the surrounding areas first, and then I start describing what the characters look like and what they feel. So, for example, we've obviously we need to set the subjects first. We find the scene in the middle of a field, to wind blowing like across the horizon as the sun begins to set in the distance. So it sets the scene, right? Like a very scenic scene.
Can
And then
imagine
we
it.
introduce the characters, like two individuals stand towards each other, and like um and again, like I'm a horrible writer, but again, like I think I have a good like idea for storytelling. But so yeah, external first, and then go in on the important details, set the scene up, and then narrate what actually is happening in the scene. Funnily enough, I did write a book, two books, in fact. I never finished them, but they are kind of like those became like the foundations of what I thought anima is supposed to be.
Oh.
Yeah, and I wasn't a furry at the time, so I had to make a lot of adjustments. But um, basically, I love mystery, so I incorporate a lot of lies and deceit in my stories, and I love gray storytelling. If you're not familiar of gray storytelling, it basically means the morality of a story is very obscure. A good example is Game of Thrones, but it did become really like moral at the end because people want to do the right thing and yada yada yada. But um, but yeah, that's the kind of storytelling that I like. Anyways, I'm so sorry. You're the writer here, so you should tell more about the stuff that you do.
Uh, well, let's just say that I'm a writer, but I have a specific genre in writing.
Erotic.
And yes, and romantic.
He did not even deny it. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I have to admit, yes. Like that's why I agree with what Coco said. Or you have to set the scene first, because I'm also a type of writer that goes show and tell, not like not the dialogue type, but also the actiony type. And action meaning not the actual like action star and stuff, but yeah, to set the scene. That's why I got interested. I can imagine well when we D&D the scene and stuff. That's why I enjoy it too.
Do you like this guy?
But on a scale of 1 to 10, he's a 7. I like the hair, the chest hair and stuff.
I haven't thought of the person that I want to date in my
Yes.
Stardew Valley run. You like this guy? I already dated him though. In my last like Stardew Valley playthrough. But I don't mind.
Uh,
Shane is really hot.
I have to admit, I have a soft side for Scaly.
How about this bird? I'm not a huge fan.
Mm, 6 out of 10. I feel lazy
Oh my
today,
goodness.
yeah.
This is the guy that actually I wanted to date. I'm not sure if I'm still going to be able to get into their house though.
I can always break in. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding.
I
I do not.
wish. Nope, it's already locked. But I can show him to you here.
Let me guess. It's the tiger, isn't it?
What? No. He's here. Look at him.
Hmm. And it has an orange hair too. I wonder why you like
I
him.
know. I have a soft spot for tigers and felines.
I have a soft side for shark. I have to
Yeah, we
admit.
have biases. But yeah, about writing. Sorry, I cut you off there.
Well, we can proceed it to it. Like, since we're done with the scenes and you introduced me to some characters, why not talk about character development or character writing? If you're okay with it. I
As
mean,
mentioned,
Mike,
I write my
still the same.
characters um morally ambiguous because I think
Mm,
I mean, and I also like playing archetypes, like writing like specific characters. Like, for example, a really bad evil character at the beginning, and then you know, it's always satisfying to set them up for a redemption arc in the future, or maybe they're a kind, like honest person, and then they get traumatized and then became evil, and then became, and then redemption arc. I think that's my favorite kind of archetype, but I do all sorts of archetype characters like tsunderes or whatever avoidance characters. So I tend to write pretty complex characters, or I prefer those. But there's also beauty in like the most simplistic characters. Like there's a particular one in my previous campaign called Crowner, which he is a lawful good paladin, and our campaign was Icewind Dale, which is pretty evil. Most of the party members are actually neutral, some leaning to evil, but he was like a lawful good paladin, and it's one dimensional, but it works, and that's how I write my characters, and it's pretty flexible. But the main core that I want all my characters to have, I want them to be relatable, or at least familiar enough that you can identify the archetype, so that even if you're not fully understanding the complexities of the character, you have an idea. And that's my vision when it comes to writing characters, because especially if like you have a lot of characters in a in a scene or in a story, it's important that you have very distinct like um ideas of which each characters are. Like for example, in My Hero Academia, there's like a lot of characters there, but they're all pretty different from each other, right?
Yes, dynamics.
Yeah, and how their dynamics, yeah, affect each other, and like their dialogues and stuff like that. Um, so I tend to do something similar. Like in our current campaign in the Black Compass, like we have 1,000 NPCs, and each of them you feel like is different from each other, and whenever they interact, there's like some sort of like chemistry going on, right? That's what I try to do
Mm-hmm.
and emulate. And yeah, that's how I do
I'm
characters.
kinda we're also the same, but I focus more on character dynamics and how they interact with other characters. And yeah, it's fun way to write stuff. It's fun to mess up stuff in writing. Because you have like conflicts and stuff. How will your character react to it? How will your yeah, it's fun writing stuff. And I can and yeah, character development done. Hmm.
Yeah.
Settings done. What else? Scenes done actually. How about plots too? Okay, it's good. It's good.
So the way I write plots for like a story arcs or characters, actually, funny enough, this will be discussed later, um, in our meeting, with the Compass members. Um, it's actually fairly simple. Um, I use the very traditional like introduction, like exposition, and then rising action, climax, yada yada yada, and stuff like that. Um, and I mean, that's pretty much it. Like the way I do story arcs, like I absolutely love setting up story beats early, if you know what I mean. uh
Tidbits, tidbits.
and then setting, like and planting those seeds to blossom later on in the story is something that I love doing. Like imagine this, like we're 40 sessions in Black Compass, but it feels like nothing is happening, but there's a lot of stuff that happened, right? Like
Yes, I noticed that
since
too.
the beginning, like you feel like, for you Kairos especially, like you feel like you haven't grown, but there's a lot of like small little details that are like popping in and out, but there's no conflict yet. There's no, I mean, there's rising action now because it was introduced that other versions of yourself are trying to kill you, right? But it hasn't
Mm-hmm.
happened yet. But there's a lot of like possible scenarios that you think that might have happened already, like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of unexplained scenarios that would make sense if you do apply like your theories, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult to prove, and I'm sure at some point you're gonna think when I do the reveal, oh, that's what happened,
I didn't.
right? And that's set
Yeah.
up, and that's conflict, and that's a very satisfying way to tell a story. I think, and
Yep.
when it comes to plot and writing all that stuff, I want it. Sometimes it's okay to like because I'm not sure. Like it's like when you do that, it's kind of like you're setting up like expectations, and you're setting a story. It's difficult to balance in D&D, but for books and other like novels, and like that's going to be a linear story, like start to finish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of like ways to change that. But for D&D, when I write for D&D, it's a interactive experience. You have to find that balance in between, and it's crazy. So I'm a DM. I'm not a writer. So when you ask that question to me, I have maybe a different answer. So how would you write your plot?
It's quite similar to be exact. The build up, the tension, and until it reaches the climax. But the way I write it though is that I I actually show it. I hadn't write any action stuff. So like in the romance, I tried to like set up the scene and stuff. And I have to admit, it's hard for it to be relatable since I didn't try anything. But if you take a look and read more stuff, I think it fits my story.
Yeah,
It's just how it doesn't for me since I'm writing a book and not a D&D campaign. I think it matters the most is how the characters will perceive the other characters and how will it affect the story. So like I focus on the spotlight. Like there's a scene or a spotlight shining and there's no other branching stuff.
there's
But I
something. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
mm,
I thought you were done.
yeah. I also worked on some background stories, but
Mm,
I tend to be focused on characters more,
yeah. So
especially in early scenes.
I
Okay,
think
continue.
you're forgetting something like about your
Topic.
when you talk about writing. You're a visual novel writer. That's why you focus a lot on like character dynamics and things like that, because that's very important for visual novels. So this is a question that I'll ask you afterward after my answer. But my question is, what's the most um, meaningful character dynamic, or like the most cool character dynamic that you've ever written? For me, it's not necessarily right, but I was playing an NPC um, in my previous campaign, and one of the players had a relationship with that NPC. So, to provide context, that NPC is a rogue, a thief. The best there is, actually, but they're retired and they're pretty old. So, those rogue days are gone, and they just want to live like a happy life. They want to settle down. And the player is actually a priest, a very religious person, an adventurer, and they're pretty old too. And little fun fact, they've already died, so they're just living the rest of their lives, just trying to help the world or whatever, going on adventures, meeting people. And when they met, the rogue thought, because he's a rogue and like doesn't really understand like social norms or whatever, and like he's pretty carefree. When they met, they had this love at first sight kind of scenario, and the player went along with it, and
Oh,
like it's crazy because they had like an intimate scene between them. But next session, I was really surprised because the player was looking for the guy, and the guy already left because he thought it was like a one night stand, because he's a rogue. He's not used to people falling in love with him, right? He's used to swindling them and like taking advantage of people. So he's very surprised that this person came back even after like talking about himself. And he was like, it was crazy. And like a couple of sessions, like they talk about how their relationship is going to be. The rogue is like very unsure, and he told the player that he might cheat. There's tendency that he might cheat. He might find someone else attractive and have stuff with them, do stuff with them. And it was like building like a open relationship with through communication and stuff, right? But over the course
uh-uh.
of the campaign, they started developing like a deeper connection with each other, especially like experiencing near death scenarios that count time and time again. And basically, they became like a really wholesome couple that communicates like whatever they need. And um, the rogue eventually had to face his tragic history, um, And basically the reason why he became a rogue is that his parents were writers and were killed by corrupt nobles, if I
Mm-hmm.
recall correctly, or killed by criminals. And then he basically spent his entire young adulthood hunting those criminals down, and in the process, he became the best rogue, and that's his backstory, and that's what happened to him. And he became very vengeful. He didn't care about other people, and then he met a person that's a priest that who is a very good person and like advocates kindness and forgiveness, and he helped this person change, and developed this very wholesome relationship with each other. And there was a point in the campaign where he they basically had a choice to have a kid,
Are they
despite
both
being,
guys?
yes, despite being both guys. They had the choice to have a kid. However, and they talked about it, and they said, yeah, they really wanted to have a kid, like to have a family and stuff like that, because they're pretty old, and like they're like retiring in their careers. But um and while they were at it, like in that intimate scene, when the when things were about to finish,
Mm-hmm.
the rogue basically said that no, he doesn't want to have a kid. Firstly, because they're in the previous campaign, they're currently in a war, and secondly, he doesn't think that he's you know in the position to be a parent, because his parents were writers, and they were writing stuff about nobles, and criminals killed them, and they were basically heroes because they're adventurers. They're living a dangerous life, and they don't want to bring a kid into a in a very dangerous like world. So even if they love each other, and there's so much drama, and like so much, it feels so real, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when in real life, like me and my partner
If
can't
they
have kids, but we're both workaholics, and we're both men, and we're both like we have different hobbies, and we're working through our lives. We have a lot of personal problems and stuff that we need to deal with. If if one of us were a woman, like we wouldn't want to have kids right now. And I think that's a very very mature and like realistic thing in a story, right? And that
Yep.
build up was happening all campaign. Like we were 160 sessions in at that time, and it's like they became a relationship in like session 30 or 40 or something like that. And it's just one of like the heaviest scenes that I've one of the most wholesome scenes that I have ever done. And I don't think I can top that because it takes a lot of effort on the player side and the DM side to be in sync so much that to make that happen. And the NPC eventually like did change and was forgiven for his past and things like that. And you know he didn't become a criminal by choice, like it happened because he wanted revenge, but because of the murder of his parents. But it's just an interesting story. Anyways, what's the most like cool story you've done, or like character dynamic you've written?
I think the most memorable one for me is um uh wait. I forgot to tell. I'm a healer, not a necromancer. And yeah, it's basically I have this specific type of stuff to like where the main character is I'm shy, I don't know what to do, and then there's the his partner is the bold one, the type that will protect the little ray of sunshine if that's the case, but not necessarily bad people. It doesn't have to be bad, bad boy. But yeah, so the knight and the healer are together, and then a calamity strike, and let's just say not the knight got killed, and the healer, because of their love, their relationship, the knight was always there for him. The knight, he tried healing the dead, and it's not that's not possible. So he tried and he tried, he even tried, he tried and tried again until until all of the life that surrounds them, the battlefield, turned lush green, and it eventually became a forest. So
Ah.
yeah, basically, I love it. Doesn't have to be tragic. Stares at my character. Yeah, I really like writing love stories that isn't quite happy ending, but it's still an end, a good end.
Actually, on that note, I actually have a very dark side when it comes to writing as well. And Theodore had a character last campaign in Icewind Dale. He was okay. So he's basically called an immortal warrior. That's his
Mm.
entire story arc. He's like an immortal, and that's his prophecy, and he doesn't know the reason why. And eventually, he meets a pirate queen, who very similarly has a very tragic background. Um, they pillage, they attack like towns in their boats. She's like a pirate queen, so. But eventually, she was pardoned. In exchange, she will work as a city like captain because she has really good techniques and like tactics and like very good at her job. And there was a crisis at that time, and she basically was hired to be a captain, and that's how they met the party. And Theodore's character, the immortal warrior, fell in love with this pirate queen. And well, not really. It's more of the pirate queen that was very interested in the immortal warrior, and they made love. They had this relationship. It started off as something, um, infatuation, but eventually became like a deeper connection because the pirate queen spent most of her life pillaging, killing, and then protecting people, and she has a lot of regrets. Meanwhile, the immortal warrior, Theodore's character, basically had you know forever to do whatever he wants, and it, also he's the reversed. He was experimented on, tortured because of his immortal blood, and he's on the what do you call it, the oppressed side, and they basically shared those stars to each other, and they made love, and
Right. And
un mhm.
okay, that was
un
shocking. Okay, continue.
unbeknownst to Theodore and his character, the reason why he's immortal is because he has a Tarask inside of him.
A Krask?
A
A what?
Tarask, a Tarask. It's like a very powerful monster in Forgotten Realms, in D&D
Oh.
5th edition. And he basically has a Tarask in him, and that's fueling his blood, like giving him like immense strength and and like regeneration, stuff like that. And he made love with the woman, um, the pirate queen. And when he laid his seeds, so did the Tarask. And when I described the scene, when Theodore's character finished, the woman felt like there was something big that entered her body with it. And she just thought that, Theodore was gifted. And after that, a couple of weeks, months later, she was pregnant. And it was like pregnant, like she was puking, she was doing stuff, and then at some point in just a random part of the story, very abrupt, she started, like, they were traveling in the middle of nowhere, and they were just going to one place, and she basically told the only female in the party, which is Shiva, Chrome's character, that she was feeling ill, and they had this woman time, even despite Chrome's character is not exactly the friendliest at that time. They were still women, and like they had this womanhood relationship. They're both women, so she asked Chrome's character for help, and her belly started acting up. Like she felt pain. Like it's as if something was clawing out from her belly, and she like yelled in pain, and like I she ran out of like when she and Chrome's character, they left the party, like they were in a wagon and they left because she was feeling ill. She might just think that her water is breaking or whatever, like she needs to pee or whatever, and she started yelling, and then Chrome's character called the rest of the party, and then they you know when they
Help.
came to help her, her belly was like bulging, and something is trying to get out. And I described that scene horrifically. Something burst out. And that's a love
Um,
story, ladies and gentlemen. And she died. And then she gave birth to a monster, which is how I introduced Theodore's reveal. Like, there's something inside Theodore's character that he didn't know. And it killed this woman that she loves.
what the? Yeah, that's an interesting story. I like that.
And
So,
the story
okay.
continued. At the near the end of the campaign, they found a shrine that can resurrect people, and basically it's a wish spell, and the rest of the party basically gave Theodore's character like the wish to bring someone back, and he did, and she was alive, and at the they fought the final boss because that was at the end of the campaign. They fought the final boss, and everything was happily ever after. The end of the story, actually, I think I can look it up. um, Let me see here. Uh, what was his name? Kruger, was it?
Kruger.
Kruger. Hmm. Actually, I'm not sure. I don't think it's Kruger. Marcus. Marcus.
Marcus. I'm Marcus.
Marcus. So, let me look for it. Marcus was convinced by Kinella, the Pirate Queen, to go on an adventure with her. If he would live for an eternity, she wanted Marcus to remember her face for all of eternity, like the cruel pirate she was. They went on a boat, explored different lands, met new people, and had a Tarrasque as a pet. Because at this point, Marcus was able to, release the beast, and it became their pet. As they spent time with each other, Marcus bonded with the beast, taming it and allowing it to freely roam around. It also enabled Marcus and Kinella to raise a family. But over the course of their journey, when their children now had their own children, Kinella began to grow old, but not ready to give up on her dream to make Marcus remember her face for all of eternity. They both started a new journey, a journey to find an artifact that would allow her that would allow her body to turn into ice, making her immortal herself. Which is an artifact that I teased in the campaign very early as well. That there's an artifact that can turn you immortal, but your body will turn into ice. And that's their ending. They went on a journey to find that, and it's open ended. It's up to the players how they interpret it, if they succeeded or not. And that's a very a very nice story.
It is.
Like she's
I
very
love the
cruel. Like
conflict.
imagine that, like you're immortal and you're so cruel that you want your partner to remember her face for all of eternity, and you're making you're making sure that he loves you so much that you would torment him, right? And she's very
Yeah.
selfish. She's very selfish. The reason why she was very interested with Marcus in the first place because he was immortal, and she's very selfish. She wants to be immortal as well, and and she gets her dream, but she changed at the end because she wants to spend her time with him.
Love.
That's crazy. And there's so much more because if you're in a campaign, then it's different. If you're in it, there's a lot of lore and a lot of teasing, and and yeah, that's how I write characters. That's how if the if you let me write your stories for you, That's how it's going to go around. That's the kind of writer that I am and DM that I am in my games. I love storytelling. I love stories, and yeah, there's so it's such a creative hobby, right? It sparks imagination. It
It is.
moves people in an emotional way that it's very difficult to do in like uh, you know in other forms like D&D. I mean, like you watch a movie, you can get emotionally attached to them, but it's very different if you're interacting with it, right?
Hmm.
And that's something that books can't do. That's something that movies can't do. You know, in the future we
Yep.
might have AI, but I'm not even sure if AI can, you know, maybe they can
Replicate
write like organic stories, but it's very different if it's coming from another person. I think
the emotions, the
because
soul.
we're friends. We're building this story together. It's not like an artificial intelligence writing a story for us. It's people role playing with other people, and there's something special about that for me. Sharing stories together and sharing in writing um, a campaign together, like going through a campaign together. And yeah, that's my vision of like writing. And my job as a DM is to write a good world, write a good plot and setting, write scenes for you guys and like your character arcs and things like that. And it's your your responsibility as players to play along with what I write, and that interaction with the story and the world and shapes that story all together. And I think that's just a very beautiful thing. I am so sorry I took so much of the time again, but it's just
No,
how it
I
is, right?
enjoyed it. Yes, it is a diary,
Yeah,
and
and
I
that's
really
how
like it.
dark that
I really
is.
like
My stories
listening.
can get really dark at times too, right?
Yes, I admit, I really, as to the audience, as a member of the Black Compass, I admit, Black Compass campaign, I admit, church scene.
Yes, and that's not even like that's still very early, and you guys don't
Mm-hmm.
know that character with the people that you cherish starts blowing up.
No, no.
I can be very ruthless. Anyways, my that's not very cute. That's not very Stardew Diaries. But anyways, again, I think I change depending on the person that I'm with. Normally, I would be using this voice for this, for Stardew Diaries. But I'm like, in serious mode. Like I'm talking like as if I'm a very different person. But that's just how it is. This is my diary. I'm always gonna say that I express myself in however medium that I want to express myself. So, I don't care. And there was this. I'm not sure if you watched the episode where I was sick and I was
The one
speaking like
without
in a
throat.
much deeper
Yeah.
voice. No, in Stardew Diaries, I have a much deeper voice because I couldn't speak um in with my normal voice, and I think I was pretty sexy. I think because I hate my
Okay.
voice. It sounds so high pitched. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but anyways, thank you so much. Any? Do you want to say anything else before we wrap up today?
Continue writing, and the first draft is always better than no draft.
Yeah. Writing makes perfect. Wait, practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And
Writing.
writing makes perfect. Um, my journal advice when you're new to writing, um, some people, aren't familiar with how to write stuff, but people are more have a lot more understanding or idea on how to paint and draw. So my advice is to follow the same steps as if you're drawing. So start with a sketch, start with an outline of what you want to write, and then start adding, you know, line arts to it. Like make the outline concrete, build the foundation of the story, and then after that you start adding color, like adding the flavor of your story, what it means, what makes it pop out, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
elements in the story that you want to add, and then after you add the colors, add the highlights and contrasts. What makes your world interesting, what makes it pop out and stand out, like what themes are you going for, what details are you going to add in, how big is your world. So actually how big is your world is actually in the outline. And then after that, just refine, go back through your artwork, polish and things like that, and then you have a story. And just follow the same process as if you're drawing an artwork, and I think you'd have a good idea. Another tip that I have when it comes to writing I call it the broad stroke. When you're starting on something, write a lot of ideas in like a piece of paper or canvas or document or whatever. Write a lot of ideas, and then once you have these ideas all together, start breaking them down, connecting them, things like that. And that just really helps me do my process when it comes to writing something new. Um, and the way I wrote anima, I started with the core theme first, and then I started adding the worlds, adding the themes, like and yeah. So let me give you guys an example. For anima, the core theme is nature, and when in nature there's and when you apply it to a magical anthropomorphic world, so what things affect nature? Technology, that's Frozen Expanse. Religion, that's Dawn Republic. Like
Actually,
elemental magic and fusion, that's or being too connected to nature, that's Ethereal Primes. What if you're too engrossed in the laws of nature, like predator and prey, that's Middlelands. What if you like philosophical side of nature, that's Empty Domain. What if you add very sci-fi or like high magic or stuff like that, like time magic, how does time affect nature? That's Rordado. So it's all connected to the main plot. So whatever conflict that I start in one place feels connected to the other places. And you know what happens if you break the laws of nature. And that's the core themes of my campaigns, and that's the core theme of the world. And yeah, and what is nature but to live, survive, thrive, and then die.
adapt,
And
die.
that is my campaign. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I think we'll only do 2 episodes, so I won't pre-record any more than this. But you are always very much welcome, Lupus,
Aww.
to come back. Always. Just know that I have a pretty strict recording time in the morning. So if you want to record with me, it has to be like 8 a.m. or something. but
Sure. Sure.
But yeah, thank you so much. It's supposed to be a Thursday for you guys, so I hope you guys are wrapping up in your week. Um, setting yourself up for a nice, relaxing Friday off after work or after school. Um, you know, I think it's exam times for a lot of people because normally exams
Yeah.
are held in Thursdays and Fridays. If you're, working through that, good luck. If you're in the Philippines, it's a holiday, so I hope that you're not doing anything. I hope you're taking this time to, um, you know,
Relax.
relax and spend time with your family because normally Holy Week is spent with your family, get-togethers, reunions, things like that. So I hope you're participating in those. If you're, in good terms with your family. If not, then spend time with your friends. And yeah, thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your day. Final thoughts, Kairos? Final words?
Stay safe and enjoy.
All right, stay safe and enjoy. Thank you so much. Bye bye. I will
Bark, bark,
now
bark,
go
bark,
sleep
bark,
in the
bark, bark,
game.
bark. Bark, 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 bark.
Oh, there's an earthquake. In game.
Huh? You
In game.
scared me.
In game. In game. Ooh. Let's go mining.
You level up
But
every
yeah,
time you sleep.
I level up when you reach certain level up points. But that was a good session. That was a good session.
Mm.
A good recording.
Right, are you still recording or not?
Oh, I'm still recording. Hello. But yeah, that was a good one.